Hello everyone, this is the review channel. Today, I will introduce to you a highly dramatic Korean movie. Revenge Club is a movie about the story of three women from different social classes. But they come together as a group with the purpose of revenge. A fish shop owner who always dreams of a better life. A housewife living with an abusive husband, and finally, the daughter of a wealthy corporation president. Three people with different starting points. Different living circumstances would never meet, but they gather to avenge those who have hurt them. How will they carry out their revenge? Let's follow the review channel to find out. Hee-soo is the son of Do-hee. He is always bullied because his mother sells fish in the market, which is both smelly and fishy. Facing the teasing of his friends, Hee-soo always tries to endure. He knows his family's hardship, his father died early, and his mother sells fish to raise two siblings. So, he doesn't want to trouble his mother. A poor boy living among the wealthy is often looked down upon as a matter of course. However, that's life. The more we endure, the more they take advantage of it. They always deliberately insult Hee-soo's mother and sister. This makes Hee-soo unable to stay calm and he punches the rich kid, making him fall flat on the classroom floor. Who'd think the kid would break his arm and call the police? Do-hee was selling fish in the market when she got a call from the school. Leaving her stall, she rushed to the school like a bullet. Outside, she saw her son being forced to apologize by the police and teacher. Regaining composure, Do-hee stepped in to understand. Then Do-hee, bearing the pain in her heart, told her son to apologize to them. Hee-soo, long wronged, burst into tears at the sight of his mother. The other party, relying on their wealth and power, escalated the matter. Knowing she was just a market fish seller who couldn't fight these arrogant rich people, Do-hee could only bow and apologize, but the wind doesn't cease for a still tree. Seeing Do-hee back down, they became even more aggressive. They were used to sitting on top of others and didn't know when to stop. The nouveau riche woman said Do-hee didn't know how to teach her son and that her son was a thug deserving of police arrest. Seeing her son insulted so harshly, Do-hee couldn't hold back any longer. She couldn't fathom such thick-skinned individuals. Clearly, her son was at fault, but they could twist the truth and blame it on others. But just a second later, Do-hee regretted it because she was poor, so she could only swallow her anger. She bowed her head and begged the nouveau riche woman to forgive her son. She blamed herself for not teaching her son well. For her son's future, she begged them to forgive him and bowed her head in apology. The bully's son saw Do-hee kneeling to apologize and took out his phone to film the scene. The kid even poured his cup of water straight onto Do-hee's head. Then he laughed mockingly, saying that because his arm was broken by Hee-soo, he couldn't hold it properly. The bully's mother not only stood by but also tried to take advantage. She thick-skinnedly demanded 20 million won for medical expenses. If not, she would call the police to send Hee-soo to jail. Do-hee was really worried. The three of them couldn't eat or drink. Selling fish for a whole year wouldn't earn 20 million won. With no other options, Do-hee could only lower her dignity and beg at her feet. At this moment, Young-hae was also drinking water nearby. Hearing this, Young-hae spoke up on behalf of her good sister to deal with this unreasonable bunch. Just now, the nouveau riche woman was so arrogant, but upon seeing Young-hae, she immediately shrank like a wet puppy, shivering with fear. She couldn't believe that she was caught by the wife of a famous corporation bullying a fishmonger. Thinking about how her family depended on them to open a shopping mall, she quickly told Do-hee she would forgive her and then scurried away faster than a squirrel. Do-hee naively thought that the nouveau riche woman wouldn't cause trouble anymore, and that her son would stop bullying Hee-soo. But Young-hae knew these rich people very well. She warned Do-hee that this matter wouldn't end so simply. Young-hae felt injustice on behalf of Do-hee. She scolded Do-hee for staying silent and not fighting back. Young-hae couldn't understand why Do-hee could do such dignity-losing things just now. Clearly, the nouveau riche woman was at fault, yet Do-hee ended up apologizing to her. Do you have no self-respect left? Hearing this, Do-hee could only smile bitterly. She explained that being at the bottom of society, she no longer knew what self-respect was. Shameful things like this eventually became normal. Moreover, as long as she could protect her children, she would kneel down 100 more times if needed. At that moment, Young-hae warned that if Do-hee continued to endure, the matter wouldn't end. If she didn't fight back, the bully would continue to torment Hee-soo. Moreover, they targeted Do-hee's family because they were poor. They would surely continue to bully and extort money. Do-hee didn't believe it and was even angry with Young-hae. She just wanted to be a kind person and live quietly with her two children. On the way home with her son, a motorcycle deliberately crashed into them. To take revenge, the bully purposely hit Hee-kyung, Hee-soo's older sister, causing her injury. They felt tormenting Hee-soo alone wasn't enough. This time, they went after his sister. Hee-soo then went to confront the bully. During the chase, he got injured. Seeing both her children get hurt, Do-hee was furious. She called the bully's mother to talk. The nouveau riche woman immediately became enraged, saying she would send Do-hee's son to jail. The pent-up anger in Do-hee burst out. This time, Do-hee couldn't hold back anymore. Seeing her son lying in the hospital bed, remembering her daughter being hit, she decided she wouldn't endure anymore. This time, she would rise up to protect her children and teach the nouveau riche a lesson. Do-hee called Young-hae. She wouldn't let anyone harm her children anymore. Being poor is not a crime. A lady who is one of the richest in Korea but likes to hang out with market women. Seeing her friend bullied, she rushed to confront the arrogant nouveau riche women oppressing the poor. However, when facing her own wealthy family, she also had issues she couldn't resolve. Today, Young-hae attended a high-level gathering of the elite. At the party, there was a woman attending with her husband. She noticed the woman's wrists were covered in bruises. It was clear she was a victim of abuse. Young-hae silently observed her. She saw the woman crouch down to clean her husband's shoes. When her husband raised his hand, the woman quickly cowered in fear. The woman's name was Mi-suk, and her husband was a congressman. In the eyes of the public, they were the perfect couple, deeply in love. Today, Mi-suk's congressman husband was campaigning for votes. To succeed in getting the most votes, he needed to earn people's trust. So, he had to maintain the image of a happy, harmonious family. But Young-hae had seen the previous scene. Without hesitation, Young-hae asked Mi-suk if she was being abused by her husband. Before Mi-suk could answer, Young-hae asked if she wanted to take revenge. At first, Mi-suk, taken aback, refused. But that night, after her husband got drunk, he beat her again. His kicks and slaps rained down on her. This time, Mi-suk fell into utter despair. Moreover, her daughter also despised her for being weak and submissive. She looked in the mirror and decided to call Young-hae. Thus, Young-hae gathered a vengeful team. There was Do-hee, always looked down upon at society's bottom. Mi-suk, who was abused by her husband from the middle class. And finally, Young-hae. The three decided to form a revenge club. Thus, the revenge club was established. But curiously, if Mi-suk's reason was her abusive husband, and Do-hee's reason was her children, what was Young-hae's reason for revenge? A chaebol family was having a meal. In South Korea, patriarchy is overwhelming. Despite years of marriage without children, Young-hae endured relentless criticism from her family. Today, her husband revealed that he had an 18-year-old illegitimate son. Hearing this, Young-hae was stunned. Thus, she sought revenge on her husband. The next day, when the sisters met, Young-hae handed 5 million won to Do-hee for her to resolve the compensation, but Do-hee refused. At that moment, in the cafe, a customer ordered hot coffee but suddenly wanted cold coffee and refused to pay. Seeing the cafe staff was easy to bully, he loudly scolded them and threw the coffee at the staff. Witnessing this, they couldn't tolerate the man's unreasonable behavior. The three sisters decided to follow him, then secretly splashed a bucket of water into his restroom stall. They wanted to teach him a lesson. Luckily, when he tried to chase them, he slipped and fell. The first reluctant revenge attempt was a success. Next, they would avenge Do-hee. They wanted to teach that nouveau riche woman a lesson to curb her arrogance. First, they needed to make Do-hee look classy and elegant, which was key to victory. Additionally, they had to hire a lawyer to teach her the law. Do-hee gained a lot of confidence. This time they had to win. Based on the lawyer's teachings, Do-hee demanded the woman present her fake fracture diagnosis. The nouveau riche woman began to panic. Because the fracture was fake, extorting money was her real intention. Seeing her panic, Do-hee grew more assertive. She spoke continuously, forcing the woman to only drink water. But relying on this alone wasn't enough. Do-hee was still very poor. Despite her arrogant facade, she was more scared than anyone. If it really came to the law, she would definitely lose. At the crucial moment, Young-hae appeared radiantly, declaring that Do-hee was a very close sister to her. With such a strong backing, not winning would be strange. The nouveau riche woman then backed down. In her mind, she thought about how to flatter these sisters. Elsewhere, Young-hae's husband comfortably welcomed his 18-year-old illegitimate son home. Although extremely angry, she couldn't get a divorce. Do-hee was very confused. It turned out that Young-hae's relationship with her husband was merely an alliance between two noble families. They didn't have love, but if they divorced, it would affect the interests of both families. So, they couldn't decide their own fate. Pitying her friend, Do-hee sighed. It turned out the legendary chaebol heiress was sitting right in front of her. Who would want to live like that, even with a lot of money? After discussing, the three decided that if the law couldn't deliver justice, they would take matters into their own hands. Before parting, Young-hae tried to pay for the coffee, but Do-hee insisted it was on the house today. Young-hae was pitiful, she didn't have such small money on her. Next, it was the turn of Hee-soo's school principal. Young-hae appeared, bringing her husband's illegitimate son, Soo-jaeon. He wanted to join his stepmother's revenge club. The principal was organizing a parent meeting, but when there was no one in the meeting room, they secretly put laxatives in his water. While preparing to pour it, they accidentally spilled it outside. At that moment, the principal entered the room. They looked at each other in disappointment as their plan failed. Do-hee wanted to confront the principal during the meeting but held back, recalling her daughter's advice. She almost spoke out but couldn't, so she silently sat back down. The principal suddenly doubled over in severe stomach pain. Wanting to get up for the restroom, he realized his pants were stuck to the chair. Everyone tried to help him, but they couldn't lift him up. Next, the scene showed the principal rushing into the restroom with the chair. The three sisters laughed heartily but wondered who had done this. While they were confused, Young-hae's stepson approached them. As a member of the Revenge Club and a friend of Hee-soo. Seeing his friend's sister and friend being bullied, as a member of the club, he couldn't miss out on this. Meanwhile, the old principal, with his pants and chair outside, was stuck in the restroom. Suddenly, he received a text message. Remember, this isn't over yet. Think about your family. If everyone knew about this, where would you hide your face? We know very well and have evidence. We are the Revenge Club. This mission was complete. Doo-hee asked who the next target was. The three women smiled at each other. People say that three women together make a market, but these three sisters together are comedic gold. Enjoying the fresh countryside air, they were abruptly blocked by a pile of straw falling in front of the car. The three of them drove straight into the field. Luckily, they were unharmed, only the car was damaged. They couldn't just stand out in the sun on the road. Sister Doo-hee was very confident in herself. Whenever she saw a car, she would use all her tricks and skills, from seductive to cute, to wave it down, but no one paid her any mind. An hour passed like that. Young-hae lost her patience and decided to handle it herself. Suddenly, a car stopped. It turns out that being beautiful always gets you more favors. Young-hae opened the car door, took one look, and quickly closed it again. What's wrong? Smell or waiting for a convertible? As luck would have it, they got to ride in the back of a truck, enjoying the scenic rice fields. Just then, it started to rain. The three ended up soaked, heading to the police station to bail out Soo-jayam. Seeing Young-hae drenched at the door, Soo-jayam was surprised that his stepmother actually came. For the past 18 years, Soo-jayam had never been cared for by his mother. He had always lived with his grandmother. When he heard that his wealthy father had taken him in, his mother suddenly returned. But his father wanted to sell his grandparents' grave to build a resort. Soo-jayam, angry, fought with the brokers and was taken to the station. At the police station, seeing his defiant attitude, his heartless mother accused him of hitting people first and walked away laughing. The police said he needed a guarantor to be released. Soo-jayam hesitated for a long time before finally calling his stepmother. After signing the bail papers, seeing Soo-jayam's injured face, Young-hae felt very sorry for him. But she just told him to inform her next time he went out. And if he fought, to do it closer to home. Hearing that, Soo-jayam felt very warm inside. From a young age, Soo-jayam had lived with his grandparents, without his parents' care. But after 18 years, his father took him back only because of the grandparents' land. Because of this, Soo-jayam decided to take revenge on his biological parents. Coincidentally, Young-hae also wanted to get back at her husband. Stepmother and stepson officially signed a mutually beneficial pact. Elsewhere, Soo-jayam's mother was meeting with his father to negotiate how to get him to agree to sell the land. They never imagined the stepson and stepmother had teamed up for revenge. To ensure no one in the family discovered their secret alliance, they practiced their roles carefully. Young-hae remained the cold-faced stepmother, and Soo-jayam the obedient son. The husband appeared, questioning their sudden harmony. Young-hae claimed she was looking out for the boy for her husband's sake. Since entering the house, he couldn't bring shame to the family. The father reminded Soo-jayam to behave well when he met his grandfather the next day. As long as Soo-jayam made the grandfather happy, he would easily inherit the corporation. After the father left, Soo-jayam sneered. He had abandoned him for 18 years and now took him back just to use him to inherit the fortune. Soo-jayam asked Young-hae why she chose to marry someone like his father. In everyone's eyes, she was a rich heiress married to a wealthy man. But in her own family, Young-hae had no status because she was an illegitimate child. She was just like Soo-jayam in that respect. Since childhood, Young-hae had been bullied by her half-siblings. That day was Young-hae's mother's birthday, but she was the last to know the location of the celebration. When she arrived, she saw Soo-jayam and her husband there. It was her mother-in-law's birthday, but her husband casually brought his illegitimate son to the party. But Young-hae's father and mother were not angry. What they cared about most was helping Young-hae's husband's illegitimate son secure the inheritance, not who his mother was. In wealthy families, benefits always come first. Young-hae's half-sister spoke mockingly. Now Young-hae could understand how her mother felt when her father brought another woman's child home. Is this karma? Soo-jayam saw Young-hae quietly eating and not saying anything, so he hurriedly stepped in. It's okay, my stepmother treats me very well. On the way back, Soo-jayam saw Young-hae resting her head on the steering wheel. Thinking she was sad, he wanted to comfort her, but as he got closer, he saw her laughing. Finally, she could speak her heart after years of holding back. Because being born is not the child's fault. Being born is not their choice because no child can choose their parents. If there is any fault, it is the parents' fault. Hearing Young-hae's story, Doo-hee's eyes welled up with tears. She always thought Young-hae had everything, but she never imagined she had her own sorrows. They hoped Young-hae could consider them as her sisters. So, you might not have a lover, but you must always have good friends. At your saddest, most painful moments, they are always there to comfort you and give you strength. After observing the long-lost grandson, the chairman asked Soo-jayam, "Why does it seem like your father waited 18 years to bring you back?" He pretended to think carefully and then said it's because they're family. The chairman was pleased. He chuckled and said, you and your father are really different. Your father is too greedy, so he couldn't let you try the estate. At this moment, the chairman's asthma recurred. Sujayam hurriedly went to rub his back. The grandfather noticed your closeness with your stepmother. Sujayam was extremely surprised. It turns out the chairman, with his sharp eyes, couldn't overlook everyone's revenge club. He thought the chairman would uncover the revenge plot, but instead, he received a surprising question. Why? Do you need my help? Stepping out of the chairman's room, Sujayam saw the respectful faces because of his status. But they didn't know that the boy they were flattering could very well become the heir to the conglomerate. Misuk suffers from severe OCD. For Misuk, arranging flowers must follow a certain framework. Seeing this, Doohee also tries her hand at it. Indeed, she treats flowers like market fish. With one chop, the flower is gone. Looking over, Young-hae is imagining the flower as her husband's head. Regretfully, she can't throw her husband's head like a flower petal, can't relieve her anger by throwing flower petals. Young-hae suggests using a stronger method like shooting guns. Doohee, the professional shooter, aims perfectly and shoots like a professional athlete. Amateur shooter Misuk still has beginner issues. She can only breathe to ease the tension, close her eyes tightly, and then squeeze the trigger. Aiming and shooting at the target feels amazing. She quickly imagines the tombstone as her husband's face. She reloads continuously. These three women, with every shot they take, associated with the person they hate the most. Looking back at the tombstone, Doohee jumps. Misuk suffers from compulsive disorder but can still shoot two 10-point shots. Meanwhile, Young-hae is lucky to hit the target. Only Doohee, who is so confident, couldn't bear to watch. On their way back, Doohee simply walked into the elevator while the others were terrified. Young-hae's husband and Misuk's husband were in the elevator together. Seeing the two husbands, Misuk asked why they were there. Sensing trouble, Doohee quietly slipped away. Young-hae explained that she wanted to invite Misuk to exercise to get closer. Doohee's heart was pounding. They almost discovered the relationship among the three of them. At the dining table, Misuk's husband always pretended to be a good husband. Young-hae couldn't stand his lies and brought up a story about a famous professor who liked domestic violence. Misuk signaled Young-hae to stop talking. Annoyed by her friend's attitude, Young-hae snapped at her. How long are you going to keep running away and being submissive? But Misuk said, after all, he's my children's father, so I can't be heartless. Young-hae replied, if you keep enduring your husband's beatings like this, you and your daughter will suffer the most. Awakened by Young-hae's words, Misuk decided to take revenge. At that moment, a motorbike sped past Sujayam and Hee-soo as they crossed the street, causing them to fall. The girl on the back turned around to look. Misuk realized it was her daughter. Losing control, the motorbike crashed into the curb. Doohee recognized the driver as the spoiled rich kid. The children were bandaged at the hospital, and the sisters sat silently in the hallway. Doohee broke the silence. She accused Misuk's daughter of being just like the spoiled rich kid. Misuk hastily denied it. But in her anger, Doohee said Misuk and the rich kid's mother were no different. Sensing the tension, Young-hae intervened just in time. Misuk asked her daughter to apologize to Hee-soo and Doohee, but the girl just walked away. The Revenge Club was on the verge of disbanding. On the way home, Hee-soo told his mother that it was the first time he had seen that girl. The girl's name is Baek Seo-yeon. This was the first time Seo-yeon had been on a motorbike with that spoiled kid. She had never bullied him before. At that moment, Doohee realized she had misunderstood Misuk but didn't know how to apologize. Just then, they received a call from Young-hae. It turned out Young-hae had planned for them to meet to reconcile. Just like that, the club was united once again. They began planning to get revenge on Misuk's abusive husband. Young-hae discovered that her husband, the principal, and Misuk's husband had pooled a large amount of money together. Tonight they also gathered. It is known that these three often meet at a fancy restaurant, but they didn't know which restaurant to catch them in the act. So Young-hae decided to invite the other two to her house. However, never having hosted guests before, Young-hae didn't know how to entertain them. In this matter, Misuk was very skilled, so she taught Young-hae, and to lure the mice out of their hole, Young-hae had to drop her cold demeanor and learn some softer gestures. Reluctantly, she finished the lesson. Misuk and her husband arrived at Young-hae's house on time. For the sake of revenge, they acted as if they didn't know each other, successfully fooling their husbands. The lecherous principal arrived a bit late, marveling at how big Young-hae's house was. While Young-hae and Misuk entertained the three rotten men inside, Doohee was sneaking into the parking lot to coordinate with Sujayam. They set up inside the car but couldn't get the lights on. Realizing that pressing random buttons was too dangerous, they decided to move to the back seat. It was indeed not easy to get into the car, but they finally settled in. Meanwhile, inside the house, the three men were enjoying the delicacies, but the taste was strange. Misuk's husband's face looked like a withered fish. He hastily grabbed a piece of sashimi to try, but it was salter than the East Sea. Mi-suk and Young-hae exchanged smiles, remembering how they cooked together an hour earlier. Young-hae gently asked the guests if the food didn't suit their taste. The principal hurriedly replied no, saying the dishes had a very special flavor, very delicious indeed. Mi-suk added a compliment, saying if they said the lady of the house was a chef, people would believe it. After the meal, the three vile old men talked in a private room. Young-hae brought up a bottle of wine, wanting to hear what they were discussing. When they saw Young-hae, they pretended to talk about something else. Unfortunately, when her husband took a phone call, she managed to overhear. It seemed someone was bringing a bribe. Do-hee received a message from Mi-suk. Sure enough, the secretary arrived. He carried a yellow cloth-wrapped box, placing it in Mi-suk's husband's car trunk. After a few drinks, the husbands were all a bit tipsy. Mi-suk drove her husband home. Do-hee and Soo-jayam followed behind, watching as Mi-suk deliberately opened the trunk. Do-hee and Soo-jayam approached the box. After taking her husband upstairs, Mi-suk checked to see if he was asleep. Seeing him sleep like a log, she went downstairs to meet Do-hee, but the sound of the door closing woke him up. Do-hee was very nervous facing the box in front of her. The two of them thought there must be hundreds of millions inside. With this much bribery, they could threaten Mi-suk's husband. If he didn't comply, he would go to jail. They swiftly readied their phones to photograph the bribe. But when they opened the box, they were shocked. Oh my god! It was all dietary supplements. How could this be? Digging further down, they found an envelope. Was it gift certificates or stocks? But to their surprise, it was just the instructions for the dietary supplements. Meanwhile, Do-hee hurried over to retrieve the phone she had secretly placed in the ice bucket. She wanted to see what her husband was hiding. At that moment, her husband walked in, expressing thirst, and grabbed an ice cube from the bucket. Young-hae was terrified, thinking she had been caught. She quickly left. At that moment, the phone in the ice bucket rang. In the parking lot, the three remained incredulous that the box only contained supplements. Suddenly, Do-hee saw Mi-suk's husband leisurely walking down. They quickly hid behind the car with lightning speed. Honey, why are you coming down here? I forgot the box of supplements the principal gave me. Oh yes, I just remembered too, so I came down to get it. Thus, their first attempt failed. They found nothing suspicious. Do-hee and Soo-jayam escaped, but Young-hae did not. Her husband hurried to retrieve the phone. Sure enough, a good phone remains unaffected even when soaked in ice water. When Young-hae thought she was exposed, her husband assumed she had carelessly dropped her phone into the ice bucket. Seizing the opportunity, Young-hae played along, saying she was getting old and forgetful. Could this tycoon husband be a bit foolish? Thus, the first plan to deal with Mi-suk's husband failed. The club gathered again to discuss the next strategy. Do-hee noticed an injury on Mi-suk's hand. Mi-suk's husband got drunk and broke a bottle to beat her. What a monster he is. They should cut off that guy's hand soon. Maybe he's getting stronger because of the supplements he's taking. Speaking of supplements, Do-hee suddenly came up with an idea. Then the three of them went to a psychiatric hospital. Do-hee began describing her bizarre illness. She felt irritated and angry at everything, as if the whole world was against her. As a result, her head felt like it was going to explode. Young-hae embellished the story further. During her episodes, Do-hee would recklessly run around with thoughts of suicide. Moreover, Do-hee wanted to harm others and frequently had outbursts, cursing people non-stop. After drinking, it got worse. She would throw things and even hit people. Yes, it's all because of this bad hand. Should I just cut it off? The doctor diagnosed Do-hee with emotional dysregulation and prescribed her a month's worth of medication. He eagerly promoted the medication as a traditional herbal remedy. Taking this would curb her alcohol cravings and her desire for meat. Sounded like a quack doctor's medicine ad, but not sure if true. If there really is a medicine that makes you not want to eat meat, I'd like to try it too. Mi-suk promptly swapped her husband's supplements with the new medicine. To avoid wasting the supplements, Mi-suk decided to take them herself. She felt relieved seeing her husband take the medicine. She anxiously waited for the medicine to take immediate effect. The next morning, her husband complained that although he slept well, his body felt heavy. Seeing the medicine working faster than expected, she encouraged her husband to keep taking it for better health. She then offered him his favorite piece of beef, but he didn't find it appetizing. He found the pickled radish much tastier instead. He even asked Mi-suk if she added something special to the radish. Oh my, all the ladies wanting to lose weight should ask the director for the medicine's address right away. In the middle of the night, Mi-suk woke up to find her husband watching a nature documentary, shedding tears. The man who used to beat his wife mercilessly was now fragile and tearful. Mi-suk hurried to report the success to the Revenge Club. While at the supermarket with her son, Do-hee encountered that arrogant woman again. Could it be that she stepped in dog poop when she left the house? That woman still used her arrogant nature to mock Do-hee's profession. She picked the wrong person, the wicked woman. Now, Do-hee was no longer the timid weakling but a confident woman. She was ready to stand up and crush that arrogant woman's haughtiness. The truth is, your way of educating your children is ruining their lives, the arrogant woman retorted with a threat. She would cause a scene at school to get Hee-soo expelled. You threaten me, and you don't think I can threaten you back. Do-hee quickly called out Young-hae's name. Just hearing Young-hae's name made the arrogant woman turn pale with fear. Turning back, she realized she had been tricked. She was about to resume her fit of rage. Do-hee called out Young-hae's name again and asked her to come over. The rich lady was fooled once but still didn't learn her lesson. She turned around again. Ha, tricked again. She was in the midst of boasting that Young-hae was nothing to fear and threatening to make Do-hee live on the streets. Then Young-hae spoke up, breaking the rich lady's arrogance. Indeed, having a wealthy best friend is worth its weight in gold. Elated by their victory, Do-hee and Young-hae decided to go to Mi-suk's house to celebrate with drinks. Mi-suk's husband was campaigning, not back until late. Mi-suk and Do-hee prepared snacks while Young-hae was pampered since she didn't know her way around the kitchen. If she got into the kitchen, it would only cause chaos. After a while, the three finally sat down together to toast. After a hearty meal, they were all quite drunk. At this point, Mi-suk opened up to her two friends. It turned out she had a son, but he passed away 3 years ago. Since then, whenever her husband got drunk, he would abuse her. Perhaps, overwhelmed by grief from their son's death, he took out all his anger on Mi-suk. All three women had deep emotional wounds. They comforted and consoled each other. Caught up in conversation, they lost track of time. The doorbell rang, and Do-hee went to answer it, startled. Mi-suk's husband had returned home. The man stood there for a moment as Young-hae babbled nonsense from being too drunk. You bastard, I'll kill you. Not understanding what was going on, he recognized Do-hee as the woman who had argued with him. Do-hee quickly grabbed Young-hae and left Mi-suk's house. Mi-suk explained that it was just a parents' meeting to discuss their children. Because their children were in the same class, normally her husband wouldn't be so clueless. Whether it was the effect of the medicine or not, he said nothing, gave Mi-suk flowers, and went to his room. Phew, narrowly escaped another disaster. Seeing Young-hae drunkenly entering Soo-jayam's room, she looked quite adorable. Could this lead to a younger man piloting the plane? The father suspected an inappropriate relationship between his son and stepmother. What kind of father has such strange thoughts? His biological mother ignored him for 18 years, but after his wealthy father took him back, she shamelessly called to ask for money. If he refused, she would come and make a scene. His father just wanted him back to fight for the inheritance. Seeing this, Young-hae felt a sudden pang of sympathy. Maybe this would be the next mission for the Revenge Club. Even though he wasn't her own child, Young-hae wanted to treat Soo-jayam well, so she started learning how to be a good mother online. Young-hae often praised him, frequently prepared snacks for Soo-jayam, and began using mom to start her sentences. Unaccustomed to Young-hae's sudden change, Soo-jayam asked her to go back to the way she was before. Had she been doing it wrong? So she went to her friends to ask for advice. Do-hee advised that a good mother should first know how to cook delicious food. So, Young-hae went home and started learning how to cook online. It was her first time cooking noodles. When she opened the lid, a huge scallion made Soo-jayam burst into laughter. Well, let's overlook that detail. Having someone cook for you is already good enough. At that moment, Young-hae's husband came home from work. Seeing the two laughing and talking, he began to have suspicions. See, I told you, there's no smoke without fire. Could a stepmother and stepson really get along that well? That night, he subtly tried to ask his son if there was any drama. But Soo-jayam used the excuse of being busy with homework to avoid him. The man called his secretary to order surveillance. Meanwhile, after the wicked woman had spent all the money Young-hae gave her, she went to the school gate to extort more from her son. Unexpectedly, Young-hae came to pick up Soo-jayam. Seeing Young-hae wasn't much older than Soo-jayam, his friends speculated he might be dating her. Under the secretary's surveillance, Young-hae's husband also received a photo of her picking up Soo-jayam from school. He had never seen his wife take an interest in anything before. Now she personally went to school to pick up his son. This made him feel a bit uneasy. Adding fuel to the fire, his younger brother teased him in the elevator. Trying to appear nonchalant, he smiled in front of his brother. But once he left the elevator, his face darkened. Since taking the medicine, Mi-suk's husband had become surprisingly obedient. He no longer drank alcohol or ate meat. Especially when watching nature documentaries, he becomes incredibly emotional. Seeing him in low spirits, his subordinates offered him a piece of meat to cheer him up. Unexpectedly, just as he put the meat in his mouth, he saw a lion killing an antelope on TV. Tears streaming down his face, he told his subordinates that the food they were eating was essentially themselves. Seeing a giraffe eating leaves, he instinctively took out some vegetables and ate them happily. What's more, when his subordinates offered him alcohol, he used to drink endlessly without getting drunk, but now one cup knocked him out. He staggered home, grabbing his daughter, which frightened Mi-suk and their daughter as this usually meant a beating. He just patted her head and went to the liquor cabinet, telling his wife to get rid of all the alcohol. Seeing her husband's change, Mi-suk was overjoyed and promptly poured out all the liquor, but her joy was short-lived. One day, While watching the news, he saw a story about a wife poisoning her husband's supplements after 20 years of abuse. Reflecting on his own odd behavior, he became suspicious. Just as Mi-suk brought him his supplements, he remarked that they were good, and she should take one too. Prepared, Mi-suk took a pill, dispelling his suspicions. Then he said he felt strange since taking these pills, maybe because they didn't agree with him. So he told Mi-suk to either throw them away or take them herself. Mi-suk froze for a few seconds, worried that her husband might have realized she was tampering with the pills. So she quickly ran to her friends for advice. At this moment, Do-hee was selling fish at the market when she saw the principal shopping. She hurriedly went to greet him warmly. The principal, seeing she was a parent, tried to take the fish without paying, but that wouldn't fly with Do-hee. Remembering her two friends hiding in the cold storage, Do-hee quickly ran to open the door to let them out. A bit longer and they might have been frozen like the fish. Young-hae asked if he didn't recognize her. He didn't, probably because his brain was waterlogged. As he walked away, the principal suddenly recalled. Do-hee was the parent who spoke up when he had a stomach ache. Briefly suspicious, he turned back. The three women, unaware, happily headed to Do-hee's house. Suddenly, Mi-suk noticed someone watching them through the reflective glass. It's the principal. The three of them hurriedly left, but he kept following them. Thinking of fleeing, Young-hae questioned why they should run. So all three turned back to greet the principal. The principal pretended to search, then vanished. Little did they know, the danger was just beginning. The scene of Young-hae picking up Soo-jayam after school was posted online. Netizens speculated about their relationship. Soo-jayam was confused as to why they were being criticized. Young-hae calmly replied that stepmothers and stepsons shouldn't be too close. It's best to keep a distance in the future. The next day, Young-hae received a call from Soo-jayam's mother. Without wasting time, she attacked Young-hae's insecurities about not being a mother, claiming she doctored the photo. She threatened Young-hae that next time she wouldn't just send it to her husband and the chairman but also to the media. This woman is selling her own son for money. She doesn't mind tarnishing her son's reputation. Is she worthy of being a mother? Angry, Young-hae retorted, do as you please. My husband bringing back an 18-year-old son isn't a secret among the elite anymore. But no newspaper has published it. You think you're messing with normal people, don't you? Can you threaten our family? Frightened, she spat out photos, threatening to sell them to Young-hae's husband. Neither my husband nor I are fit to be parents. She arrogantly claims Soo-jayam is my son, a fact no one can deny. No, I want to deny it. Soo-jayam, concerned, asked his mother to sit next to him. But Soo-jayam sat next to Young-hae and called her mom. He told his mother he came to resolve things with Young-hae and asked her to leave. Soo-jayam stayed to battle his mother's hostility. On the way to taking Soo-jayam to school, Young-hae remembered it was his birthday and stopped by a shopping center to pick a gift for him. But trouble ensued. Young-hae encountered that wicked woman again. She didn't want to engage with such a malicious person, but she saw Young-hae alone and started poking at Young-hae's inability to conceive. Then she went inside to buy a handbag. Young-hae said nothing and followed. With just a gesture, all the handbags in the store were delivered to her house. She even told the salesperson, "Don't let just anyone in, it's expensive." After learning that the supplement Mi-suk gave him was from the Yongpyo mental hospital, he was furious. Although it only made him dislike alcohol and meat, not affecting his health. But he knew his wife had never resisted being beaten before, so he couldn't imagine this scheme. Yongpyo then took Mi-suk with him to his presidential campaign. Afterwards, he asked her if he was losing control of his anger. Shocked, Mi-suk stammered, unable to speak. He didn't want Mi-suk to associate with Do-hee and Young-hae anymore. Moreover, Yongpyo took Mi-suk to his campaign rally. She went to the room to advise her daughter to attend, but her daughter firmly refused. The daughter questioned if she liked such places herself. If she didn't, why force herself? Important campaign events must naturally show off their family. On the way, Mi-suk asked about the interview location, but Yongpyo dodged the question. Unexpectedly, he took her to an orphanage to solicit votes. Clearly, Yongpyo knew Mi-suk was haunted by this place, yet he still took her there. It turns out the orphanage is where Mi-suk used to live. However, that time was a ghost in her mind. Years ago, living in the orphanage, she was mistreated. Despite her wife's haunting memories, Yongpyo used her past in the orphanage to gain sympathy from others. Reflecting on the time she was mistreated, Mi-suk hurried into the restroom to regain her composure. But in the mirror, the image of her past abuse reappeared. When she got home, her husband was drunk again and scolded her for leaving halfway through and abandoning him alone. Then he started breaking things and beating Mi-suk. Her daughter hid in her room and didn't help her mother. She felt her mother was too weak. However, this time Mi-suk did not endure it any longer. She went to meet a reporter to expose her husband and reveal the true reason why their son died. Mi-suk's son didn't get into the university Yongpyo wanted. This made him feel humiliated. Ignoring his son's wishes, Yongpyo forced him to study abroad. Their son fell into depression, and something unfortunate happened. The man feared others would discover his failure, jeopardizing his rising career. Young Pyo not only didn't hold a funeral for the boy but also concealed his death. He always said that their son was still alive and studying for a master's degree abroad. Young Pyo even forced Mi-suk and their daughter to keep this a secret. At this moment, the hypocritical man was still passionately campaigning. He eagerly took photos with the children. After returning to the car, he scolded his subordinates, telling them never to let him do this again. At that moment, his subordinate received a phone call. Mi-suk naively did not know that the reporter did not publish the article but sent everything to Young Pyo to protect his bid for the next presidential term. When he got home, Young Pyo met Mi-suk but did not say anything and just went into his room. As expected, Mi-suk did not receive an article. Instead, she received a false speech about her son's death. Outraged by her father's speech, Baek Seo-yeon questioned her father's statements on TV. She then brought up how he forced their son to study abroad. Seeing his daughter raise her voice at him, Young Pyo intended to slap her. Unexpectedly, taken aback by his wife's slap, Young Pyo didn't have time to react before Mi-suk spoke up. "Who do you think you're going to hit? Do you want to die?" "Oh my, this feels so good." Young-hae discovered that her husband had transferred all their assets to his name. She immediately hurried to confront him. Unexpectedly, he said, "What's yours is also mine. Those high-rise buildings in your hands are useless. Expand them several times over." "Better." Infuriated, Young-hae humiliated her useless husband without holding back. She asserted that without her, he would be nothing. Without her family's support, he wouldn't be where he is today. Even though Young-hae isn't significant in her family, they could easily crush this son-in-law. She went to her half-sister to strike a deal. Meanwhile, her husband was discussing with his partners how to expand her high-rise buildings. Young-hae took documents to meet her brother-in-law at the company. Her husband received a call from his secretary and panicked. The brothers were fighting over the inheritance. Byung-soo rushed over and heard his wife announce she was transferring all her shares to his brother. Shocked by his wife's action, Byung-soo wanted to stop her, but Young-hae turned and shouted at him, "Remember who Young-hae is. If you dare touch my stuff, you're dead." Knowing that if his wife transferred her shares, his brother would own more shares than him, which would ruin Byung-soo's chances in the inheritance dispute. So, Byung-soo followed Young-hae into the elevator to renegotiate with her. He promised not to touch her high-rise buildings anymore and to quickly transfer them back to her name. Previously, Young-hae had agreed with her sister to transfer all her shares to her. She just needed her sister's help with a task. What that difficult task was, the director hadn't revealed yet. That night, Byung-soo brought flowers home to appease his wife and instructed his partners not to touch Young-hae's high-rise buildings. But his partner gave him a suggestion. "It's best to get rid of your wife and son." The danger started looming. Returning home, Byung-soo falsely accused Young-hae and Soo-jaeon, planning to send them abroad. This was clearly an exile. If the tiger doesn't roar, it's mistaken for Hello Kitty. Young-hae decided to confront her evil husband. For family ties, she endured a decade with someone she didn't love. She had to sacrifice 10 years of her youth and dreams, but because of a single false accusation from that woman, her family and her husband conspired to discard her. She was determined not to let them achieve that. She threw all the plane tickets, hotel reservations, and her family's benefits into the trash. Her patience, and her long-held reluctance. She wanted to expose all of her husband's crimes over the years. Young-hae appeared at the company board meeting, causing everyone to gossip. At the meeting, she learned of a crucial Chinese guest the company would host. Luckily, the person receiving the guest was her husband. Her time had come. The Revenge Squad held an urgent meeting to plan tomorrow's battle. If the meeting with the Chinese partner failed, the chairman would make Byung-soo game over. No matter what, the Revenge Club had to try to prevent the two from meeting. At that moment, Byung-soo was in a hotel enjoying wine and polishing his extraordinary looks. He was also learning a few Chinese phrases to talk to the guest tomorrow. But he didn't know Young-hae had put sleeping pills in his wine. Feeling sleepy, he quickly set his alarm an hour earlier and happily went to bed. Byung-soo didn't know the Revenge Squad had sneaked into his room to prepare their revenge. Everything was ready, they even switched his stack of documents. The next morning, the sun was high in the sky, but Byung-soo was still asleep. Receiving a call from his secretary, Byung-soo screamed in horror. He rushed to unlock his phone, but the password was changed. Opening his wardrobe, he found it empty. Grabbing the landline, he found it disconnected. Remembering the safe's code inside the closet, he ran to it. Opening the closet, he found a note on the box saying the code was inside. Seeing the shredded papers, Byung-soo was speechless. By the time he pieced together the shredded papers to get the code, it was already past noon. The plane signaled the Chinese guest had arrived. Opening the safe, he took out a suit stained with ketchup but had no choice but to wear it. He grabbed the documents and rushed to the hotel lobby. While the chairman was trying to keep the client, Byung-soo rushed in. Seeing his son's condition, the chairman couldn't hide his shock. To worsen matters, the client covered his nose due to the horrible smell emanating from him. Due to this incident, the company lost a major client, and the chairman was extremely disappointed in his eldest son. Young-hae kept her promise and gave Soo-jayam's mother a sum of money, asking her to do an interview, to publicly reveal that Soo-jayam was Byung-soo's son. She wanted to expose her husband's true nature to everyone. What Young-hae didn't expect was that the woman accepted her money in front of her, but immediately went to Byung-soo to negotiate for double the amount. The next day, instead of the promised interview, there was an article where the woman exposed Young-hae. Tearfully, she claimed that Young-hae, unable to have children, had stolen her child and attempted to kill her. Because Young-hae was from a powerful family, she didn't dare to fight back. She hoped the public would help her. Indeed, this move by Byung-soo was very clever. In an instant, Young-hae was painted as the villain. Young-hae hurried home to confront her husband about this but was met with irrational scolding. Furious, Young-hae hit her husband with a pillow and declared she wanted a divorce. "If you remove me from your life, what will you have left? All that's left is me. Who do you think you are? I am Lee Young-hae," she retorted fiercely. Back to Mi-suk's family, ignoring her husband's furious shouting, Mi-suk took her daughter and left that nightmare of a house. When the revenge squad heard about it, they all supported her. "He's beyond saving, damn it, just kill the bastard," they said. Mi-suk shared that she had slapped her husband. Everyone believed she needed to pay back Young-kyo for all the suffering she had endured. Byung-soo advised Young-kyo that he must bring Mi-suk back home. His influence was growing, and if he maintained it, becoming president was only a matter of time. In such critical times, having trouble on the home front was not acceptable. Returning home, Young-kyo saw Mi-suk taking her clothes. To ease his path to presidency, Young-kyo hesitated before speaking. "Sorry, I was wrong. Can you stop being angry? Please bring Seo-yeon back." Young-kyo also mentioned he had a church meeting that evening, so she needed to return and prepare dinner. Mi-suk couldn't believe that even now, all her husband thought about was his career. She felt that a selfish and deceitful person like him didn't deserve to run for president. Therefore, she decided to ensure Young-kyo would lose. But there was only a week left until the election. Young-hae advised her to return home that evening to see what Young-kyo would discuss at the meeting. Then, she should look for any documents or papers to find evidence. So, Mi-suk reluctantly went home to prepare dinner. But whenever she got close, Young-kyo would say they had important matters to discuss. He was clearly hinting for her to leave, obviously hiding something he didn't want her to know. Just when she thought the night was a waste, Mi-suk saw them drop a folder. But before she could grab it, her husband returned to retrieve it. Mi-suk was about to open it and take pictures when her husband suddenly walked in. Remembering something, she bought a bouquet and took it to her husband's office. There, she overheard the secretary on the phone. "Yes, I'll destroy it right away," the secretary said, putting the folder into the shredder. Why were they in such a hurry to destroy documents? Mi-suk sensed there must be a secret, so she took the shredded paper bag when no one was looking. Young-hae and Do-hee saw the overflowing bag of shredded paper and felt overwhelmed. Piecing this together will take forever. To reveal her husband's crimes, they each took some home and carefully pieced it together. Mi-suk's mother-in-law, who had Alzheimer's, saw Mi-suk no longer playing with her and started causing trouble. She also began piecing together the shredded paper. Everyone was exhausted but had no results yet. That night, Mi-suk rushed to the hospital. Her husband followed, but instead of concern for his mother, he immediately started shouting, "Mi-suk, why didn't you answer the phone? I'm busy, yet you insist I come here. I told you I had an important meeting today. This isn't the time for this. Your mother, don't mention my mother. This isn't a one-day thing. You want to ruin my plans, don't you?" Then Seo-yeon came running out to call her mother back in. Seeing her mother-in-law critically ill, Mi-suk tearfully asked how she would cope if she passed away. Having been an orphan from a young age, Mi-suk felt her mother-in-law was like her real mother. She always regarded her as her own daughter. In her final moments, her mother-in-law gently stroked her face and assured her that she wouldn't have to endure anymore. As Mi-suk bid her mother-in-law farewell, her husband returned home drunk. Angry, she explained how he could behave so shamefully right after her mother's passing. To her surprise, Young-kyo hurled a pillow straight at her head. In that moment, Mi-suk remembered her mother-in-law's words, "From now on, you don't have to endure anymore." Empowered by those words, despite her husband's violence, she decided to leave. Taking her daughter to Do-hee's house, she resolved to escape her abusive husband. While discussing how to help Mi-suk, the nursing home called. They had found something under her mother-in-law's bed. Opening it, they were all astonished. "Yes, this is it. Wow, she's quite cunning." Meanwhile, Young-kyo's live interview was airing on TV. It turned out both husbands knew about the revenge squad seeking evidence, so they met to exchange information. Both were somewhat unsettled. Byung-soo exclaimed nervously, "I think I'm going insane. If I divorce Young-hae, I'll definitely lose everything," he added. Young-kyo advised him to hold on to Young-hae tightly and to prevent the revenge squad's press conference. So, they decided to hold a press conference before their wives could act. Mi-suk's husband put on a passionate performance. He claimed his wife suffered from nervous issues due to the loss of their son and his mother, affecting her mental state. He asserted that Mi-suk was not in her right mind. She suffered from delusions, always fearing someone was out to harm her. To prevent his wife from revealing his misdeeds, this despicable man was ready to paint her as mentally ill. Little did he know, her words wouldn't carry weight this time. He was prepared to label his wife as mentally ill. This time, no one would believe Mi-suk, no matter what she said. Deciding whether to hold the next press conference became a dilemma for them. Young-hae suggested that even if they exposed Young-kyo, people might not believe it, but they still had evidence. So, they had to proceed with the press conference. It wasn't something they could easily let go. At least they should produce evidence to expose Young-kyo's bribery to the public. Indeed, the press conference attracted many reporters. Everyone asked about Mi-suk's condition and the purpose of her press conference. Are the lady's words credible? Does she have any evidence? Why hold a press conference to disclose family matters publicly? Today, I have to expose the relationship between the candidate for Seoul City Education Department Director and my husband, Hera Group CEO Lee Byung-soo. Here is a detailed account of the illegal money Byung-soo sent to candidate Baek. Mi-suk also exposed Young-kyo's forcing his son to study abroad. The boy was driven to death just because of her husband's greed and pride. Young-kyo felt it was disgraceful that his son failed the university entrance exam, so he forced his son to study abroad. Even after his son died, he hid the matter for the sake of his reputation. When the issue was revealed, he exploited his son's death to gain sympathy. Furthermore, they also wanted to expose candidate Baek's violent behavior. Young-hee and Do-hee stood up to fully support Mi-suk. Mi-suk said being cursed and beaten by her husband was a daily occurrence for her. Today, she wanted to expose the long-term violence of Young-kyo. The reporters again asked if Mi-suk had evidence of Young-kyo abusing her. Because Young-kyo had said her mental state was unstable. Moreover, her abuse of antidepressants had been confirmed. They did not know if Mi-suk's abuse had been recorded by the hospital. After her son's death, Mi-suk did go to a psychiatric hospital several times. But what Young-kyo said about her mental instability and drug abuse was completely untrue. Reporters once again asked for evidence of her being abused by her husband. At the crucial moment, Seo Yun appeared. The evidence is here. Everything my mother said is true because I witnessed it all. Then, reporters quickly directed public scrutiny towards Young-kyo. Do you admit to accepting bribes and committing acts of violence? Why did the Hera Group chairman's son exchange illegal money with the candidate? Your son also stood up to testify. How do you explain this? Facing thousands of reporters' questions, Young-kyo still insisted it wasn't true. Young-kyo was pelted with eggs and cursed at by those around him, calling him a liar, a villain, a family abuser. Those curses, those eggs, spoke of the end of a villain's career. Afterwards, Young-kyo was arrested on suspicion of receiving illegal bribes. Knowing it was hard to escape, Byung-soo hurried to find his wife. He kneeled, begging Young-hae, his wife, to save him. Finally, he realized he was nothing without her. All the other women combined couldn't compare to her. Without her, he would perish, then perish. After all, we've had a marital bond for 10 years. How could you treat me like this, Young-hae, after everything? Forgive me this time, Young-hae. Right, I've been holding back for 10 years. What a life, crawling beneath but thinking you're above. Thinking you're the master. So all three despicable men reunited in prison. They couldn't believe the Vengeance Club played so tough. They still couldn't believe this was happening. The Vengeance Club relied on their own efforts to punish those who harmed them. After Young-hae transferred all her shares to her older sister, she decided to travel abroad. Mi-suk returned to the orphanage where she grew up and became its director. Hoping that the children at the orphanage would grow up happy and never be mistreated. And Do-hee's life took an unexpected turn. A few years later, Young-hae returned home with a completely new look. Young-hae, is this our Young-hae? My, what happened to her? Don't the madams find this style very fitting for me? But why meet here? I bought this building. Bought what? So, you actually built this? Among my skyscrapers, this was the only one empty. Indeed, Young-hae always remains wealthy. And as for Soo-jayam's life, the director said there would be a film dedicated to him. At this moment, the Vengeance Squad witnessed a husband abusing his wife. They looked at each other and their determination surged. They all stood up to continue their revenge. The film ends here. See you in our future films. Don't forget to like and follow to support us. Bye bye.